Your current event, Napoleon.
Current event for me. I've been seeing a lot of stuff. It's not an event per se, but a current thing that's been swirling around Twitter. I'm not going to call it X, by the way, ever. People think it's funny to be like X, formerly known as Twitter, but they've already sold out. Anywho, on Twitter, one thing that's been swirling around a lot is talk about India. Sometimes I feel bad for India. I feel bad for people in India, the people of India, food that's going on there, sanitary issues that I don't even want to go into detail about, but I mean, you already know what I'm talking about. And then I'm reading the book, The Gurus, The Young Man and Elder Paisios. Fantastic. And he's all over India for part of the book, trying to seek truth in the gurus and the yogis. And even in like the 80s, which is when he was there, he was just basically saying things that you'd see written on Twitter in 2024. And I just think that place is so impoverished and overcrowded, and like there's a lot of conflicts because different races, different religions, different castes in the caste system, etc. And they all just have this stewing animosity, and it's this big pit of just, it's like hell in a lot of ways.
People are puking.
People are just puking. Went there once, I was puking. You're good though. Um, and then I thought, man, why the theme right now? And in the book, of course, he also goes into detail about the spiritual depravity and people worshiping idols and worshiping false gods and worshiping other men who are considered to be like in some way or in some manner God incarnate. And they also worship disfigurement in a lot of ways, or they would consider that if a person is insane, that that's like a special blessing, that there's a sacred type of insanity,
Ooh.
or there's a sacred, if a woman, I was reading a story about a woman who couldn't stop menstrual bleeding, and they're like, oh, that's actually just a purification happening to her, she must be blessed. And this backwards look at everything, and each one of them I could think of a corresponding Christian witness. So the woman who had an issue of bleeding touched the hem of Jesus' garment and she was healed. It was clearly something she needed healed from. It was an affliction. It was a curse. And so the power that flowed out of him reversed that. And they're in this Hindu culture, they're like, oh, this is a good thing that's happening to her, this bleeding. And we know intuitively it's not. And then, like I said, the disfigurement, a cow or a human baby is born in some way that's tragic. It's like, oh, we can marvel at this, and somehow Vishnu has smiled upon us. I don't know who Vishnu is. I haven't gone that deep, so this is probably very offensive to our Indian neighbors. But I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. And now, old Ramaswamy, that everyone's like, yeah, so base, so red pilled. He is saying all the right things, but why should it be any surprise to us that we have this propped up Hindu man? They didn't give us an Orthodox Christian. They gave us a young, yeah, I'm young, I'm handsome.
Yeah,
He's at the top of his
exactly.
game.
Yeah.
And then who else but Nikki Haley, also converted to Christianity, but you see all these pictures of her on the internet with her little dot, and she's like, so what is it? I think Hinduism is at the center of something big, and Eastern mysticism in Hinduism and the great yogis and transcendental meditation and all that. Is it any surprise that that is way, way upstream? Maybe the spring itself that produces the stream that becomes mind control magic type of stuff and MK Ultra and astral projection and remote viewing and also Helena Blavatsky's Theosophical Society and Alice Bailey's um, whatever she was into, white magic, witchcraft type of things. All the new age stuff, its home, surprise, surprise, is in the Hindu societies and in their religious structure and in their false gods.
Yeah.
The Beatles, we're all like, is it true that the Beatles were used as a CIA tool or whatever? Well, would it be any surprise that they go from being wearing their little suits and being like 8 days a week to going to India and sitting in some dirty river that's filled with human excrement and then coming back all, or Charles Manson and psychedelics. I could just keep rambling off these words, but you can see that they're all facets of the same big Eastern mystical thing.
Yeah.
And it's the false one, because you and
Yeah.
I are also into Eastern mysticism, but it's the Eastern mystical Christian tradition that is the thing that everything else is a desperate counterfeit of. And that's my current event. I don't know where we go with that. Maybe it's a whole episode. Maybe we jump into that right now and we call
Well,
this
who
episode.
talks about it more? Does anybody talk about it more than Blessed Seraphim Rose? Like, he's kind of like, at least now, he's kind of like the not buzzword, but he's like
popular.
the guy. He's like the guy that's talking about it, like Eastern stuff, because he went through it all.
Yeah.
And like arrived at Eastern Orthodoxy.
And when you say he's talking about it, you mean people are talking about him talking about it.
Yeah.
Because he reposed
That's what I
in
mean.
19... Yes. I mean, I know you know that. I'm just saying I want to make sure that...
Well, I mean, he's talking as in the books that he wrote.
Yes,
In
and that's
the
important to
lectures
highlight.
that he gave, in all of that kind of stuff. He went through an entire, like a whole pathway through that stuff, looking for truth, and found more truth in the Eastern mysticism, the evil Eastern mysticism, than he found in Western Christian stuff.
Watered
right?
down Protestant nonsense.
Most people
yes.
do, unfortunately, which is why we were talking about that present darkness earlier, is because that just paints one narrative that is applicable to many, many, many people. They grow up Protestant, Christian in some way, shape, or form. It's good for their younger years. They're sincere. They believe it. They're into it. They grow up, see a little bit of the world, realize that things aren't so clean cut and that things aren't quite the way that they were always taught. Then they get a dose somewhere or another, usually in some college class or whatever, a dose of the Eastern mysticism.
Yeah.
And they see evidence that there's something there, that there's real power, more power than they've ever seen in their
and that's my
church.
Point is that
and
there's
then
so
they're
many
like,
brands
oh
of that.
shoot, my sorry sucker parents are just boring white people or whatever that stayed the course of their upbringing. But I'm going to be the one that breaks the mold and find the real truth, because I'm seeing my friends actually have spiritual experiences. And now I'm going to their houses and having little, experimenting with little seances and having my own spiritual experiences, which is more real to them than any prayer they've ever said. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So Father Seraphim Rose went through all of that, but by the grace of God found the true mysticism, the true Eastern whatever, which still resides in that way of thinking. It's appealing to everyone once they understand.
Yeah, I have to.
What's at stake.
I have to plug this real quick. The book that you can read the Wikipedia page for Father Seraphim Rose, or you can read a biography about his life, or you can just talk to people, word of mouth it, oral tradition it, and you will get that narrative. But if you want in depth some stories that will knock your socks off, this is the bad boy right here. The Gurus, the Young Man, and Elder Paisios. And this author's name, I don't know if we're focused in here, but we'll find a way to put it on the...
Well, let me put it on this one too.
Yeah. So, this author, I believe that is a pseudonym, but I'm halfway through this book, and you're seeing intimately the journey of a person, their testimonial for all of the little anecdotes from two sides. He had spent months, intermittently too, not just did one, then did the other, then returned, but he would spend a couple months on Mount Athos with Elder Paisios and with other monks. He would learn from them, he would pray with them, he'd do liturgy with them, he would pray in a solitary way, he would do work there, he would just live that life with them, but as a Christian inquiring person, and he hadn't committed himself, and he hadn't walked that path, but he was trying to learn. And the reason he ended up there is because he lived in Greece, and one thing led to another, and he found himself there to search that truth, because he was struggling with the same things as Father Seraphim Rose, in terms of questioning, where's the meaning in the world, or is it all meaningless, or is God real, or is it, or are the postmodernists right and the nihilists right? And he had this internal anguish and struggle, and so he sought truth with the Orthodox monks. The problem is, when he did that, he had already beforehand fooled around with a lot of witchcraft and with a lot of yoga, and had spiritual experiences. And so because he was a very critical type of young man, he thought, even after having Elder Paisios speak into him, and sometimes in a mystical way, to almost like come and quote unquote walk around in his soul through conversations or through experiences together, and to give him blessings and to deliver him by God's grace as a holy man, to be able to be God's hand in delivering him from some of these afflictions, and to pray for him constantly, and that this intercessory prayer that yielded such wondrous and miraculous results that he really couldn't deny that it was real, but something in his rational mind still said, I need to give the same opportunity to the yogis, because it could just be another path to the same God. And all of these accounts, again, I'm only halfway through it, but the only reason he wrote the book was to say the world needs to know about this man, and he got his permission. At one point, even Father Paisios, Saint Paisios, had told him, stop writing, please. And then months later said, okay, you can keep writing your book. And who knows why. But yeah, it's just so close to God, so in tune with God. And this author's book, the whole reason I'm saying this is Father Seraphim Rose, yes, he's on everyone's lips nowadays. Very popular subject, but I don't know how popular this book is. I'm just here to endorse it because it may end up being an all-time like top fiver for me.
Wow.
Yeah, believe it or not.
So there's lots of little stories. Is this the same one that you were telling me about the other day with the pastries?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Saint Paisios.
The Saint Paisios.
When the man who wrote this book experienced just a glimpse of the uncreated light and a blessing of peace that was the type of thing described scripturally as a peace that surpasses all understanding, and he experienced that directly after being so bombarded by demonic attacks that he just couldn't stand it, and he thought his mind was going to be shredded, and then he received a blessing of that peace that he couldn't account for. And the elder said to him, I see God has granted you a little piece of candy from his pastry shop. And I was like, whoa, he knows that and that insinuates too, that's just a little morsel. And then that day when he was leaving, he's like, okay, I've got to hike back 2 hours to where my living quarters are on Mount Athos. And Elder Paisios looked at him and said, and don't forget, he has pastries too.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, what a I don't know. There's not an adequate adjective. What a spirited man. And I'm like just supremely jealous because I've never had that. I don't know. I've never met anyone that embodied. The closest thing that we know of would be like a Tom Bombadil type. Mm-hmm. Just light and full of joy, but also full of wisdom and a powerful person. Not someone that... It's someone that you're forced to take seriously, but at the same time, the joy and the whimsy just kind of like flow out. And you're like, we're laughing, we're having a good time, and I don't even know why. Something about you.
Wow.